Have you ever imagined a day when time simply stops? What if Jesus had revealed that on August 31st, all clocks would freeze for 6 hours, while false voices tried to deceive even the chosen ones? In today's story, learn the true and shocking story of Tanner McLean, a former police officer who died and returned with a warning straight from heaven, like subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which city you're watching from. This message needs to reach the world before time runs out. My name is Tanner McLean. I'm 42 years old, born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. I served 18 years as a state trooper, and I've seen things no one should ever have to, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I experienced that night. It was July 19th. We were on night patrol at a checkpoint near I-70. An armed suspect took off running. The chase was intense, and then the sound of gunshots. My vest absorbed two, but the third went straight to my chest. I collapsed. My heart stopped right there, on the hot asphalt. And that's when everything changed. I didn't go into a coma. I died. I saw my body being surrounded by paramedics. The siren seemed distant, as if it were being swallowed by a vacuum. And suddenly, silence. After that, I floated. No white corridors or celestial harps. I was thrown into a place where time did not exist. But the urgency was overwhelming. That's where I saw him. Jesus. He wasn't furious, but his expression was that of someone carrying the entire universe on his shoulders. He looked at me and said, "On the last day of August, time will die for 6 hours. In the meantime, the world will be tested, souls will be weighed, and whoever opens the door to deception will fall forever." I was paralyzed, but he took me to see. Jesus said no more. But he took me, not with words, but with visions so real they burned into the soul. We were floating above the earth, as if we were in space, and he pointed down. Era August 31st. The world went on as usual, planes crisscrossing the sky, people hurriedly walking with coffees in their hands, cell phones buzzing with useless notifications, laughter in squares, horns honking on avenues. It was like any other day, but it wasn't just any day. I saw the exact moment, 12 noon, local time in all nations, as if coordinated by an invisible conductor. And then, everything stopped. The time has expired, Jesus whispered, and now the truth will be revealed. Clocks froze, cell phones went dark, computers crashed, cars stopped, airplanes floated still in the air, people stood still, like 3D photographs, a woman taking a selfie, a child running with an ice cream cone, a man kneeling to propose to his beloved. Everything stopped. There was only silence, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a silence like that of a wild animal before an attack. Jesus allowed me to feel what humans were feeling. Consciousness trapped in frozen time. People were alert, trapped in their motionless bodies, trapped in a single eternal second. And it was in this silence that the first voices began to emerge. Whispers, sweet, familiar. "Son, it's me. Let me in. Mommy, are you there? It's dark out here. Honey, it's just for a second. Open the door, please." And then I saw the absolute horror. People began to hear these voices inside their homes, under their beds, behind locked doors. And worse, they believed. A woman opened the door after hearing her son saying he was cold. She disappeared, torn away by invisible hands. Her body fell like a puppet without strings. Her soul was sucked into a shadow that crept like living smoke. I screamed, but no one heard, because in those 6 hours only darkness is allowed to move. Jesus looked at me with pain in his eyes. "They are not ready. You need to warn them, before the voices take them too." After that door opened, everything changed. I saw, from up there, the earth shrinks as if plunging into an eclipse. The light was gone. Not the sunlight, but the spiritual light. The streets, the houses, the cities, everything seemed to still exist. But the shine of life had been taken away. And then, the sky bled. I'm not exaggerating. The sun became a crack of dead light. And the moon turned red as raw flesh. A dark, deep, almost pulsing tone, as if the sky itself had been wounded. "This is the sign," said Jesus. "The last warning before the invisible judgment." It was when the shadows rose. They emerged from forgotten corners, from alleys, from cracks in the sidewalks, from sewers, from forests, even from inside churches. They weren't figures. They were presences, alive, smart, hungry. They moved even when time stood still, creeping like living smoke, writhing like invisible serpents. Wherever they passed, the air froze. The leaves died. The ground darkened. They didn't need to touch. Just being close already drained everything. I saw a house where an entire family was praying. Bibles were open. Candles were lit. The windows were closed. The mother trembled, holding her son's hand. And the shadows stopped outside, roaring without sound. They couldn't enter. "They are covered by my name," said Jesus. "My blood is a shield." But many no longer remember how to call upon it. It was then that I saw a woman, alone, sitting in her living room, a picture frame in her hands, the face of her husband who had passed away 2 years earlier. And then she heard, "Abby, it's me. John, help me. It's so dark out here," she cried. She said it couldn't be, but the voice was identical. Even the accent, the way he called her name. "Abigail." She opened the window, just a little. That was enough. A shadow pierced her like an invisible spear. She screamed, but the scream died in eternal silence. Her soul was pulled like a soundless scream, ripped out by that entity that seemed to smile even without a face. Jesus turned his face away. He didn't want to see, but he allowed me to see, because that was my mission. "Love without discernment will be the ruin of many," he said. "They can't resist what seems familiar, but isn't." The shadows knew who to imitate. The mother, the father, the son, the love of your life, and whoever opened the door for them. I would never go back. While thousands fell into deception, deceived by sweet, familiar, impossible to ignore voices, Jesus showed me something different. Houses that shone. Yeah, in the darkness. Some houses were enveloped in a golden, living light, as if heaven itself had descended there. This light didn't come from lamps or candles. It was spiritual, warm, invisible to the world, but visible to the darkness and unbearable to it. I saw one of these houses up close. Inside, a white-haired woman clutched a Bible to her chest. 3 children knelt, eyes closed, praying aloud, over and over. There were tears. Yes, fear too, but there was something stronger there. Faith, pure, shameless, fierce. Shadows surrounded the house. They growled. They scratched at the windows. They murmured in those sweet voices, "Grandma, it's Mommy, let me in." But the door wouldn't move. The walls seemed to be made of spiritual shield. They couldn't touch whoever was inside. It was as if the Word of God was a force field burning everything that tried to pass through. And Jesus looked at me, with a look that said everything without saying anything. "They hid in my promise," he said. "Not out of fear, but out of trust. This will save them." Meanwhile, in other houses, the opposite was happening. People stuck alone, without a Bible, without faith, without prayer. People who had never believed in anything. And now, they were stuck in time with the worst spiritual creatures ever released. I saw a teenager, locked in his room, headphones in. He was playing a video game when time stopped. The screen froze. The power went out. And then he heard, "Dude, it's me. Luke, help me out here. I'm scared, man." The boy, confused, opened the bedroom door and was never seen again. He was swallowed by darkness as if he had jumped into an abyss. Only emptiness remained. These creatures, they didn't hit, they didn't shout, they seduced. They knew what you loved most, and they used it against you. Some resisted for minutes, others for seconds, but all who gave in emotionally, they lost their souls. Literally, I saw hundreds being taken. Good people, ordinary people, people who never thought they'd need God, until the moment they opened the wrong door. "The 6 hours are passing," Jesus said, "and every second, a soul is decided." My chest hurt, because I knew no one was warning. I thought the silence was terrifying enough, that the shadows and voices were the height of spiritual horror. But then, the sky shook. From up there, high above the earth, something began to vibrate. A sound. Not an ordinary sound. It was a trumpet, but not the kind you hear in school bands or orchestras. That shook space itself. The sound entered the soul like a knife through flesh, and every soul on earth heard it, even with time standing still. Toom! A first trumpet echoed at 12:01, and everyone, even those who didn't believe in anything, knew that something cosmic had begun. The whole sky trembled. The second trumpet came minutes later. Tom. And when it sounded, the moon's blood ran like ink into space. You have atmosphere from earth ripple like fabric being torn. And wings. God's clock appeared. It wasn't made of gears or digital numbers. It was made of light, time, and judgment. Giant, majestic, stopped. 6 hours, Jesus told me. 6 hours until the gate closes. A last trumpet was the worst. It came like an explosion it made no noise, but it made souls tremble. On earth, who was spiritually awake fell to his knees. Some began to pray, others just cried. The shadows retreated momentarily, as if they had been dealt an invisible blow, but it was temporary. This is the last calling, Jesus explained to me. Whoever heard. Whoever ignores it now will be handed over to the voices. He showed me the inside of hundreds of homes, some in prayer, some in silence, trapped in fear or distracted, people watching TikTok when time stopped, people laughing before hearing the wrong voice, good people, but with an unprepared soul. And I saw the God's clock turns once. A single pointer moved, and the countdown has begun. 6 o'clock, 6 trials, 6 chances to say yes, or open the wrong door. This is the interval of last mercy, Jesus said. But when the last second is up, everything will be sealed. And that's when I understood the greatest terror. It wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of excuses. After the third trumpet, I thought I had seen the worst. But then, the dead began to speak. Jesus took me to a small town, something like Springfield, Ohio. Ordinary houses, quiet streets, a neighborhood that looked like something out of a margarine commercial. But inside, in the frozen houses, the voices began to change. They no longer just came from lurking shadows. Now they came from photos, from albums, from memories. I saw a woman kneeling in the hallway, alone, trembling, in tears. On the wall was a black and white portrait of her father, a war veteran who had died years before. And then she heard, "Honey, it's me. Daddy's here. Come with me. We're getting out of here. It's all right now." The tone, the timbre, was identical. The woman covered her mouth, sobbing. She knew her father was dead, but longing screamed louder than reason. She whispered, "Dad, is that really you?" The voice replied, "Yes, my love. Just open the door." I wanted to scream, but all I could do was watch. She unlocked it. The door opened slowly, as if pulled by an emotional magnet, and at that moment, the floor of the house shook. Something flew in, invisible, but with enough force to extinguish the spiritual light in the room. The woman fell back, her eyes open, alive, but empty. His soul was taken away like smoke pulled through a black hole. They know where to touch, Jesus told me. They don't knock on the door of logic. They knock on the door of pain. And then I saw a 5-year-old child hearing the voice of his deceased grandfather, a teenager hearing the laughter of his best friend who died in an accident, every memory turning into a trap. The shadows imitated the dead perfectly. Some even knocked on the windows, smiling at faces that were already underground. I saw a man shout, "But I buried you. You died in 2009. The figure outside replied, "They lied to you. I was just taken away first. But now I can show you what comes next. Just open the door." And he opened it. It was swallowed in seconds. Jesus said to me, "They are not deceiving the eyes. They are deceiving hearts. That is why many will fall." The earth was still, but in the spiritual world, a silent war was devouring thousands, and almost no one knew this was happening. Jesus took me even deeper. If before I saw what was happening on earth, now he showed me what was being recorded in heaven during those 6 hours. I imagined a temple, an altar, but it was nothing like that. It was an infinite room made of light and lightning, and right in the center, a book. It wasn't made of paper. Its pages were made of living fire, as if each letter were written with burning coals. It was the book of life, and every name in it shone with different intensity. Some names pulsed like hearts. Others began to fade. During those 6 hours, Jesus said, everything will be decided, and those who choose the lie will be crossed out. It was the word he used, scratched. I saw angels, yes, hundreds, moving like beams of light, updating soul records in real time. To every soul that resisted the voices and stood firm, a glow appeared in his name. But when someone opened the door, believed the lie, gave in to the wrong voice, the name disappeared like ash blown in the wind. I cried. I saw a boy of just 10 years old keep his eyes closed, reciting a verse from the Bible he learned from his grandmother. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. His name shone like a sun within the book. But I also saw a grown man, successful, full of self-confidence, open the door after hearing the voice of his deceased wife. "Jim, is that you? Love, let me see your face." And his name disappeared from the book. At the same time, a shadow fell over his house. "What is happening is just," Jesus said, "because now everything is revealed. Time no longer deceives, no appearance, no religion, no good intentions, only real faith remains." It was then that the book closed by itself, and at the top of it appeared a count. 3 hours left. Half the time had passed, half of the souls were decided, but the worst part was yet to come. With the book closed and half the hours consumed, Jesus showed me something I didn't expect to see. The churches, but they weren't like the Sundays I remembered, full of people, praise, hugs, and coffee in the lobby. Now, were frozen. Some were completely empty, others still had people inside, but they were all paralyzed and like wax figurines in the middle of worship. A pastor stood at the pulpit, Bible open, his mouth frozen in an unfinished sentence. God is telling us that soon. And that's when Jesus said something that tore me apart inside. "Many who speak in my name, they never listen to me." He took me to a megachurch outside of Houston. LED lights still flashed. An illuminated cross rotated on the stage. Everything looked modern, sophisticated, imposing. Maz Ali. The shadows were inside. Yes, they were already there, even before time stopped. They crept down the aisles of the church as if they owned the place. They passed between the pews. They hovered over the altar, and nobody reacted. "This house bore my name on the facade, but not in the heart," said the Lord. I saw shepherds who, at that very moment, were frozen, but their souls were dragged away. Why, their voices were never connected to the truth. They did not preach repentance. They did not teach to trust the word. They just distracted with motivational phrases, as if heaven were a reward for good decisions. And then I saw a small church in the frozen fields of Minnesota, almost forgotten. Just a woman, 3 teenagers, and an old man with a cane praying silently as time stood still. Maz Ali. The light was so bright that shadows retreated even outside. "It's not the size of the congregation," Jesus said. "It's the size of the surrender." There, no one was frozen. Why, the presence of God had already taken them to a state beyond time. I saw the ladies' hands trembling, but firm in the word. The voices of the young people reciting the Psalms in unison, as if they had been trained for that moment. These listened, even when no one else wanted to listen. But in the big cities, in the most influential churches, most were silent, frozen not by time, but by the absence of truth. And then Jesus looked at me with the saddest eyes I have ever seen. I knocked, but they were too busy with the music to hear me. And that's when I understood. The worst deafness is spiritual. The celestial clock has moved once more. There were 2 hours left. Jesus took me now for the final moment, the last hour of those 6 that he had announced. And I felt, deep down in my soul, it was now or never. The world, still frozen, seemed in suspense. But in the spiritual world, everything was boiling. The shadows no longer crawled. They ran, desperate. They knew their time was running out. It was as if they could smell the gate closing and wanted to take as many souls as possible before the end. I saw entire buildings being surrounded. Hospitals, schools, mansions, slums, churches, apartments. No one was off the map. I saw a man, a confirmed atheist, alone in his apartment. He was paralyzed, but inside, his soul was waking up. He heard his deceased wife's voice calling, "Come, love, hold me again." And for a moment, he almost gave in. The spiritual door of your house shook, but he remembered a verse he once heard as a child. "In the name of Jesus, no evil shall touch me." He muttered these words, and the shadow recoiled as if it had been burned alive. "Even a fragment of my word has power," Jesus told me. I saw people screaming inside, desperate to resist, but without knowing how. Some tried to pray, but had never prayed before. Others tried to remember hymns, but only knew choruses of empty songs, and the voices came louder. "Son, it's Mommy. Are you really going to leave me out here alone? Love, open the door, just for a second. I am your brother, trust me." As emotions were being used as weapons, and thousands falling, good people, kind people, but spiritually empty. They were deceived by appearances, by memories, by guilt, and they lost everything in seconds. Jesus showed me then the last stand, houses where entire families were holding hands, praying out loud, children reciting verses in trembling voices, men on their knees asking for forgiveness through tears, women singing hymns even with the shadows roaring outside. And there, at that moment, heaven cried out, "Now!" echoed like thunder from the stars. God's clock has come to an end. 6 o'clock. Time's up. And there, the light came down. Like a river of golden fire, it fell upon the earth. Where there was faith, it entered as a shield. Where there was deception, she burned everything that was false. Where there was indecision, she judged. Swiftly, finally, irrevocably. I watched it all without being able to breathe. The sound of the light was like millions of voices at the same time, saying a single sentence, "Time's up." Jesus looked at me with the most serious look I have ever seen. "Now, Tanner, you must go back and shout to the world, 'Get ready before time stops again.'" And then, I fell. The pain, the body, the blood, the hospital, everything came back. But the vision was etched into me like a tattoo on my soul. I woke up with a scream stuck in my throat. White lights, smell of alcohol, beeps echoing, sensors stuck to my chest. I was alive. A doctor exclaimed something. Nurses rushed over, but I couldn't hear properly. My mind was still between there and here, and the only thing that pulsed in me was the clock, that clock of God, the sound of trumpets, the cry from heaven, "Time's up." Tears streamed from my eyes even though I didn't understand how I was still breathing. And then I heard the doctor's voice. "He's back. My God, he's really back." But I knew I didn't come back by chance. I came back with a mission. For the next few days I could barely sleep. The images came in flashes, the shadows, the voices, the houses shining, the names being erased. It was more real than anything I've ever experienced as a police officer. And then I wrote it. I recorded it. I said what I saw, not to get likes, not to appear spiritual. But why, if I remain silent? I bleed inside. Jesus didn't tell me to give an opinion. He gave me an order. Shout to the world before the clock stops again. And you who are listening to me now, I know you might find all of this surreal, crazy, too apocalyptic. But let me tell you something. I saw the world no time. I saw people being deceived by the voices they loved most. I saw shadows hungry for soul. I saw houses protected by only one thing, the Word of God. And I understood that this is not all about religion. It's about eternal survival. On August 31st, at noon, the world stopped, but nobody noticed, because what happened was spiritual. 6 o'clock, an invisible judgment, one last call. And if you think this is all just a dying man's brain, then tell me why. Since that day, have clocks around the world inexplicably stopped at exactly 12 o'clock? Why are children having the same dreams? Why do so many people feel that is something invisible approaching? It's because he didn't stop talking. And now, I'm just another voice saying, prepare yourself, or close the windows of the soul, memorize the word. Do not open the door to any voice, even if it sounds like the one you love most, because when time stops again, there will be no further notice, and the only thing between you and eternity will be a choice, trust or give in. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.